Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Toilets to Titles. My name is Justin Stevens. I'm going to be your host for this bonus episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Today, that's what I'm going to be breaking down. I've been doing the entire AFC South, and today is I'm going to wrap it up. And unfortunately, every division typically tends to have one really bad team that we don't want to talk about. But unfortunately, I still have to. But they do have a lot of good fantasy options on the team that we're going to be discussing. But real quick, before I get to the Jaguars, let me break it down for you again real quick. We've got at Toilets to Titles that you can contact us at. Contact the coach at Coach Sheps, myself at JustinFF_, or Nate at Nate_Dirt19. Right now, you can only see this episode on Periscope or YouTube. Our other podcast can be found on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Spotify. This is just a bonus episode for YouTubers and Periscope followers only. So let's jump right into it. We're going to discuss the fantasy studs, and I don't really see a whole lot of fantasy studs on this team. Unfortunately, they're just not that type of a team. But I will say that somewhere along the line, I got to talk about Leonard Fournette, and he does at least have the possibility of becoming a stud. So I'm going to call him my fantasy stud for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I have him as my RB15 overall in our rankings that you can find on FusionFFB.com. I did draft him in the Frankenstein League just this morning, actually. And it is whatever. It is what it is. I mean, he is what he is, and we know what that is. And it's going to be a steady RB1 most weeks. I don't really see any other studs on the team like I discussed, but with Raquel Armstead and Chris Thompson really being the only real threat for any of his carries, I got to say that Fournette's going to have the load. He's also, like, they were threatening to try to trade him in the offseason, and he's trying to fight for a new contract and everything else. So it seems like both sides really hate each other. But, I mean, they hated each other pretty bad evidently last season, and I've got them pulled up here. Actually, I do not, which I should, because I did, and I thought that I still had them pulled up. And now I'm rambling to try to buy some time. It's only a 20-minute show. All right. Leonard Fournette on playerprofiler.com. Even though they didn't even really care for each other last season, I'm still loading. This is horrible. Oh, I did have it pulled up. Great. It was in another box. Anyway, he finished fantasy points per game number 9 overall, so still a top running back. So, but by my numbers, the offense around him just absolutely isn't great, and that's why he's kind of kept down for being considered fantasy stud anymore. This is why. So he ranked 90th overall in points per opportunity last season. So every opportunity he had to score fantasy points, he was 90th overall in that category. But yet he was 9th overall in fantasy points per game. So that's what I mean. That's just how bad the team is around him to be able to really help excel him. He was 6th in rushing yards and 5th in receiving yards, but he only had 3 total touchdowns. It's really important to remember because he's bound to see some positive regression. He had an average of 8 touchdowns per season over his first 2 seasons. And then that 3 touchdown performance last season. So if he can get back up to his 8 touchdown per season average that he had the first 2 seasons, then he's back right up there in that top 5 area and could possibly be considered a fantasy stud. So that's why I kind of threw him in there. Let's see. Stay tuned for Breakout. Now, I don't necessarily have the popular opinion here on the breakdown for the Breakout, and that, in my opinion, is going to be Laviska Shenault. And that's mainly my opinion because that's Coach John Shep's opinion. And I took his word. I went and watched video of him, and the dude is crazy good. But we'll talk about that in a minute because I'm sure that a lot of people are wondering why I'm not choosing a guy like, say, Minshew as the candidate, or even DJ Chark. And DJ Chark actually should possibly be the breakout guy, but he kind of broke out a little bit last season, and I think that he's going to improve on his numbers from last season. I just don't know if he's going to improve on them enough to be considered a breakout candidate, if that makes any sense. And the reason I can't go with Minshew is because, listen, I get it. He's got the swagger. He's got that sexy stash. He's got the jorts. He started off on fire last season. He's just got what you want, that toughness factor in your quarterback. But there is some telling stats here with Minshew, like 31st in pressured completion percentage, 47th in red zone completion, 28th in clean pocket completion percentage. He also had 3 games last season where he finished as a QB1 for that week. And that's it, just the 3 games. All the other games, he wasn't even a QB1 in fantasy football. So I don't really get the hype, and some people are still hyping him, believe it or not. It's crazy, but they are. And according to playerprofiler.com, the guy that they say he is most comparable to is Shaun Hill. So for those of you that remember Shaun Hill, you are a very big Lions or Buccaneers fan, and you love backup quarterbacks. So I'm just throwing that out there. I know this seems like a strange way to say Laviska Shenault is my breakout candidate, but I also felt like I needed to talk about Gardner Minshew at some point, and he doesn't really fit the bill in any other category here, not even in the category of letdowns, because he is still at least being drafted where he should be, and that's like the QB 21 overall. I think I've got him even further down the list than that. Let me look that up real quick. On my quarterbacks rankings, I have Gardner Minshew 27th. So I am definitely pretty far down on him. I think as the season progressed last season, he even got worse and worse as other teams were getting video on him, and it's easy to stop a guy that's like Shaun Hill. So I think his career was a flash in the pan. But hopefully I'm wrong, because I do actually love the guy as far as his personality and his swagger and his spunk. But anyway, let's move on to the guy that I actually do have down here as the breakout candidate, and that's Laviska Shenault. Again, I wanted to thank my co-host John Sheps for cluing me on the guy. I did actually go out and finally watch some good game film of this guy, because you all know I'm not really the college guy. That's John's side of the business, so the side of our show here. He handles the college stuff, and because in my mind, a lot of times the college guys don't transfer over to the NFL very well, or sometimes an NFL guy didn't do very well in college, so I don't pay as much of attention to that sort of stuff. But anyway, I did finally watch some video of him, and this dude is a scrapper. Okay, he's an athlete. He really is an athletic stud. And Colorado went out of their way to make sure that they found ways to get this guy the ball. He ran wildcat formations so he can run the ball too, and crazy formations that I haven't seen at a high college level before, where they were purposefully trying to get him the ball. You could tell, and there's reasons for that. So his metrics weren't the greatest, but he definitely plays much faster on the field than what his metrics would suggest. You know how I feel about rookie wide receivers, though, and I'm not going to take him in most redrafts until it's really late, and by then he'll probably already be gone. But for dynasty purposes, this kid can play. You need to target him. I see a very good future for him in the NFL, and as a Colts fan, that's not good. So that's that category. It's kind of a long category today, but I had to get a few players in there. Beware of letdowns. So again, I don't really see a lot of real letdown potential here, because I think that most of the Jaguars players are being drafted about where they should be being drafted at. Just make sure you don't fall into that Gardner Minshew hype. Just be real careful with that. The Mr. Reliable, again, DJ Chark could have been potentially a breakout candidate, considering this is his 3rd year, and the 3rd year really is the breakout season for wide receivers. So you might even consider that and maybe look into that a little bit more on your own if you like. But he's definitely at least going to be Mr. Reliable in my book. He's you're probably going to be able to get him as a low-end wide receiver 2, maybe a high-end wide receiver 3 if you're lucky, depending on how your draft falls. And you could just set him and forget him. You'll get some wide receiver 1s weeks out of him, which is always good to have from your wide receiver 3. With this third season, like I said, you could even possibly be better just despite Gardner Minshew. If he had a better quarterback, I think he could potentially do pull in wide receiver 1 numbers on the season. Finally, our IDP guys for the Jaguars. I got Joe Schobert. Joe Schobert here is a linebacker from Cleveland, and even with Miles Jack there, Jack wasn't putting up amazing numbers for fantasy purposes. Joe did. Joe put up crazy good numbers in Cleveland, and whenever he comes over to play for Jacksonville, obviously those numbers are going to fluctuate a bit, being in a new team, new defense, and all that, but I think the two will play off of each other really well, and I think it'll actually help them both. Another guy that I am targeting in IDP leagues when I play in IDP, I'm not a big IDP guy, but I do like Yannick Ngakoue. Ngakoue. You can actually find him at Yannick Ngakoue, Ngakoue, on Twitter. I don't know how he was lucky enough to actually get his actual name, full name in there without somebody else having it too. Anyway, he's a great follower on Twitter, a great person to follow on Twitter as well, because he tweets out a lot of inspirational tweets. He'll make you feel good about yourself, make you feel good about your day. So I like to check him out on Twitter when I'm feeling a little down. Anyway, he averaged 13 points per game from the defensive end position, which is really pretty good. And this is also going to be his 5th year in the NFL. And every single year prior, he has improved. So his numbers are going to, in my mind, I think his numbers are going to continue to go up. So again, I forgot to run through my tabs, but I did hit the breakouts, the letdowns, the Mr. Reliable, the IDPs. So I'm going to try something new here. Okay, I'm going to point at the screen and I'm going to say, make sure if you want to watch the next video right there, I'm going to tag it whenever we ever get it. I think it's probably going to be the Cowboys, or it may be the Packers. Might be the Ravens, because that's the next one of each of us. But anyway, you can click right there and watch that video, or you can also click right here on our icon if you'd like to subscribe to help out our numbers and to help boost up our numbers. We could always use the numbers. So thank you very much. And don't forget to love each other.